Okay, let's go.
What's up, everyone? This is the EndZone. Welcome back. Today, the guys and I are going to cover the current NFL playoff picture, and then we're also going to go over some of these coaches that we think are in the hot seat as we get towards the end of the regular season. First things first, let's start off with the playoff picture. What are we thinking here?
So I think we can kind of all agree on the division winners so far this year. I think there's a few that are a little tricky and still a lot to be said for the rest of the remaining 5 games we have going. But for the AFC, I think we all come to an agreement on the Jags winning the AFC South, the Ravens winning the North, the Dolphins winning the East, and the Chiefs winning the West. Now here comes the tricky part, is the wild card. I really want to get y'all's takes on this. Right now, I think that we're looking at Houston, Denver, and Cleveland. I think there's some, kind of some teams on the teetering hot seat of, potentially making it, such as the Colts and the Steelers. But what are y'all's takes on that? What are y'all's thoughts?
I think I agree with you, Tim. I like what the Texans are doing. I hated seeing Tank go down this year. That's going to be a tough spot for them to be in. So there could be some shakeups as far as between them and the Colts go as the season moves along. We get into this last group of games. Steelers, I think, not that there was a whole lot going for them. I don't know how they're 7-5 right now, or 7-6 or whatever they are. But Kenny, your starting quarterback goes down. He's going to have season-ending ankle surgery, I think. I think they're going to fall out. So probably Cleveland should have the lock as they continue to win a couple more games. But yeah, I'm good with what we said. Broncos have been cooking. I know they lost yesterday against a good Texans team, but I think they should still be performing pretty well, letting Russ cook. So
yeah, just kind of carrying on with the let Russ cook. Last year, he was just kind of preparing the meal for this year. Now he's doing a little bit better cooking, actually. But yeah, just talking about the rest of their kind of seasons also. So the Broncos finish out with Chargers, Lions, Patriots, Chargers again, and Raiders. Pretty friendly. I think there might be 1 or 2 hiccups along the way, but it's a really pretty friendly last month plus a week. Then going back over to the Texans, theirs is real friendly. They've got Jets, Titans, Browns, Jets, Titans, Browns, Titans again, and then Colts. That last game of the year for them is going to be a big one, I think, especially for the Colts and the Texans. That could be a swing for the wild card, honestly. And then bouncing over to the Steelers. Patriots, Colts, Bengals, Seahawks, and Ravens. So they've got a little bit more of a less clear shot to the playoffs, but if they can figure out QB2 and Trubisky can figure out how to play good football, they might have a shot.
Yeah, I kind of think the AFC South could see 2 teams sneaking into the playoffs. When you look at the remainder of the schedule, the Colts and the Texans have pretty easy rides. And as far as they've already had some good success in the season, so they're already kind of ahead of the curve. But when you look at teams like Buffalo, where they've been struggling already, and then they have a very tough schedule, they kind of only have 2 somewhat gimme games. But Josh Allen could easily throw turnovers to make him just like the Jets week 1. And then as far as the AFC North, I think with the quarterback trouble that, all the starting quarterbacks except for Lamar have gone down, is even though the Steelers defense have won them a game or 2, same with the Cleveland Browns. The Browns have been getting kind of thrashed the past couple games. And then I don't think the Steelers I don't think Trubisky's going to do anything for them. And their offense wasn't anything that they could maintain a lead. So I could easily see both the Colts and the Texans getting in that seed. And then also Denver, we kind of don't know where they're at. They got on a hot streak, and then Russ had 3 picks against the Texans and kind of floundered offensively. But it'd be an interesting race for sure.
Yeah, I think the good news with Denver is they're finally kind of trending in the right direction and can get some more talent on that team. And Russ is actually cooking. That's kind of interesting to say, especially after last season. Kicking over to the NFC, though, I think we all agreed on the division winners for this conference as well, going with the Falcons in the South, the Lions in the North, the 49ers in the West, and in the East, it's between the Eagles or Cowboys, whoever wins this upcoming week on Sunday. So From there on the wild cards, that's where again things get a little tricky. I think it's, in my opinion, going to be that fifth seed will be between the Eagles or the Cowboys. I see the Green Bay Packers making it as the sixth seed, and the Rams making it as the seventh seed. But what are y'all's thoughts on it?
Yeah, I don't really have anything to change up on your end. Curious to see, as one of two resident Cowboys fans in this group right here, how things go this upcoming weekend. Hoping for the best, expecting the worst, like I always do. But Cowboys are hot right now. Eagles just lost a pretty rough game to the 49ers, so we'll see how it shapes up. I think if Dallas can get a win here and finish up, they have a tough stretch here to close out the regular season. So it might be kind of hard, even with a win against the Eagles, to kind of lock it down. But we'll see how it goes. Definitely rooting for the Cowboys. But yeah, I agree. Green Bay is super hot. Jordan Love outplayed Patrick Mahomes last night. Their receivers are kind of finding their own. Super young team. The stat flashed last night. I think their average age is like 25.8 years old, which is insane because I'm 24. I'm the young one in the group, but just wild to think about. But I think Detroit has the North unlock. The NFC South is god-awful. So I think the Falcons are, if you want to call it, trending upward. So unless the Saints squeak some stuff out and figure some crap out, but I mean, your fans are booing your starting quarterback, so I don't think that's going to happen. But yeah, and then I think the West is on lock. San Fran's the best team right now. I think the Rams could sneak in there. They've been playing pretty well. Big game yesterday. So yeah, I completely agree with you, Tim.
Yeah, I'll start off with the NFC East. Personally, I think this weekend's going to be a big one. If there were a division championship, this could be it, kind of thing for NFL. Pretty straightforward. Touching on the Rams also. They have a good shot at it, but they definitely do have some rough games ahead. You're talking Rams and 49ers still left to play 2 out of 5 games that are going to be some test, albeit actually both are away too, so take that as you will. And then touch in on the why am I drawing a blank? Packers, sorry. Yeah, they have a real easy home stretch, real freaking easy. Giants, Bucks, Panthers, Vikings. That's probably your hardest game of the last remaining 5, and then Bears. So they should be a sure lock. And there is a scenario that we talked about that they could clinch the division and uproot the Lions, but it is unlikely that it happens. But they need Lions to basically lose out and maybe win 1 game out of their last 5. But it's going to be a competitive ending for them.
Yeah, I think 2 of the more interesting of the remainder of season playoff kind of battles here are going to be like I said earlier, the Vikings and the Packers, both sitting at 6-6. They still have a couple matchups against each other. We haven't seen Josh Dobbs and Justin Jefferson yet, so who knows on how good they are together. Josh was playing great, and then he kind of floundered against the Bears. A lot of those turnovers were kind of fluky, and I think he was just trying to make up for lost time. Christian Watkins did also get hurt last night, so it was a hamstring, so those can be lingering. And the offense was definitely much more electric with him playing. They are still down Aaron Jones, so they only have really like 1 solid running back. So they do have an easier strength of schedule for the remaining season, but kind of see if that offense keeps up their production. And then moving to the West, we got that same situation, the 6-6 battle with the Rams and the Seahawks. The Seahawks strength of schedule is absolutely brutal. And then pair that with they're down 2 running backs. We still don't know on Walker or Charbonnet's health currently right now. If they did play like they did last week against the Cowboys, they could still pull it out. But I think, playing the Niners again and then also just playing the Rams, it's going to be a tough kind of run for them. And the Rams have a fairly easy rest of the season schedule there.
Yeah, no, I think that, like you mentioned, Green Bay, it is a tough blow to lose Christian Watkins, but I think that they have some potential replacements that, are still young enough where they can kind of, merge and kind of tame well with Jordan Love. I kind of like where the Rams are at, though, as a potential sneaky team. Not necessarily to potentially go the distance, but I mean, they have the experience. They're just, they have some young talent in some kind of questionable areas. But Kieran Williams coming back was huge for them. if Puka Nacua can stay healthy, I know he had that rib injury, and if Cooper Kupp can kind of come back to his old prime self, they definitely have some offensive weapons, and that O-line is definitely doing a little bit better than last year. Stafford would definitely have to be healthy. And that defense, again, there's still some young players on there, but they're starting to actually kind of turn some heads. But like you mentioned, I think that with Seattle, they have too difficult of a schedule coming up. I think Charbonnet is going to be out for some time with that knee. And with the Vikings, in my opinion, guys, I don't trust Dobbs just yet. I think that, look, he could be a solid, serviceable backup quarterback. And even with Justin Jefferson coming back, that's huge. But I just don't see them. They're playing the Lions twice, and that's just not really going to be an easy match for them, especially for how the Lions stack up defensively. So we'll see how things go. Kind of excited to see how these remaining 5 weeks turn out. But moving forward, we have our potential coaching carousel. So this is kind of a question that I brought up to the group. I, in my opinion, think that there's going to be 1/3 of the NFL or more that starts 2024 with a new coach. I am including, though, the Raiders, and I'm also including the Panthers because they've already fired their 2 head coaches this year. But kicking things off with the AFC, I'm just going to lift off some teams. I want to hear y'all's thoughts on potential hot seat. If y'all think it's a hot seat, warm seat, or if you think I'm just going out of my mind here. So starting things off, I think this is a pretty easy one that we can all agree on. The Chargers. I think Brandon Staley's kind of overstayed his welcome. I don't know how he's not winning more games, especially with all the talent on that team. What are y'all's thoughts? You think he's on the hot seat?
I hope he is. I have always been on the Justin Herbert train. I like the guy a lot. Dude is incredibly talented. The offense is electric. It blows my mind that they are where they are right now. And I think the only reason that they have wins in the win column is because Herbert has been balling out. So, I mean, I'm ready to see him go. I think Herbert deserves better. So, yeah, very hot.
Yeah, very hot. Hashtag free Herbie.
Yeah, Brandon Staley, since he joined the team back in 2020, 23-22 is an overall record. Actually, maybe 24 after this weekend. But he's a defensive-minded head coach, and defense has been their biggest problem there. And they do have one of the highest payrolls in terms of the defense side of the ball. So if you can't get it done with the amount of dollars, and it's not like they're not spending money, so they got talent. I know they have some injury concerns. They got players kind of banged up every once in a while, but they shouldn't be a bottom tier defense unit if you have a defensive head coach and you have, you're in LA, you can recruit. They got a good program, but yeah, he just hasn't been doing a whole lot there.
Free Herb.
Agreed. Next up, we don't really have to talk too much about, but the Raiders, they fired Josh McDaniels. I think that was a huge move in the right direction for that squad. I think that they're kind of in a little bit of a rebuild where they still have some talent and some potential assets they could use for draft capital, such as Devontae Adams. So look forward to that and talking about that this offseason. Up next, I have the Cleveland Browns. I know this might seem as a little bit of a surprise considering we talked about it in our playoff picture, but with Kevin Stefanski, I think it's a little bit of a tricky situation because with the whole Deshaun Watson trade, I mean, they were given, they gave Stefanski the keys to a team that had a solid defense already, some draft capital, and with Baker Mayfield as the number 1 pick, and he's not playing that poorly for the Bucs. I know that they're not necessarily in the hunt of things, but I kind of see this Deshaun Watson situation and being such a screw up that it was, having some of the blame going to Kevin Stefanski. And if they can't go to the playoffs, even with all the talent that he's been provided, and if Deshaun Watson, being out for the rest of the season kind of comes to potentially a close after next year, I wouldn't be surprised if Kevin Stefanski is on his way out, and even as soon as this year. So what are y'all's thoughts? Do you think he's on the warm seat, potentially hot seat, or do you think I'm going a little too crazy with this one?
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think Cleveland, given all the bad pub with, Deshaun Watson, obviously, because he carries what he did with him wherever he goes, and then also just the absolute contract blunder and how everything's worked out. I mean, you see what the Texans got for Deshaun, and you see how things are trending up in Houston, and I don't know. I think it might be reasonable that the Cleveland Browns organization looks to kind of clear house and kind of turn over a new leaf, I think, with all the negativity kind of surrounding them. They have a lot of talent, but I mean, it might just be in their best interest to kind of start to move forward from this kind of fluky, weird year, in my opinion. So I'd say the seats warm.
Yeah, I agree.
Hot.
Yeah, it's definitely warm. Just going over his past couple seasons. So his first season in Cleveland, he was 11-5, 8-9, 7-10. Currently 7-4. So has the opportunity to improve that a little bit and break kind of the trend. I think these last couple weeks could help him make the case to keep his job. But if he fumbles games he's not supposed to, I think he's out.
I don't know how much of a part of the trade he was for Deshaun Watson. I mean, obviously, head coach has some say in it. But going back to just the lifetime career of the Browns quarterbacks, they had to do something. And Deshaun was an elite quarterback. He has yet to prove anything, especially for that $250 million contract they gave him, fully guaranteed. But when you look at the season, I mean, Nick Chubb getting hurt, they were a run-first team. That was their whole identity. Him going down really that was a big blow to them. Their defense is still doing fairly well, and then they just had a quarterback carousel after Deshaun got hurt. And not to say he was even doing, like I said, he wasn't really doing a whole lot. Well, he was healthy, but PJ Walker, DTR, and Joe Flacco now. I think Flacco should be the guy going forward. Obviously, they just brought him in for that reason, but I don't think it's so to blame on the quarterback or on the head coach. I'm sorry. It's kind of a little bit of a leeway you give to them. You got bad luck with the injuries. Nothing he can do about that. But I think I can see the warm being for his seat.
Yeah, I think he's probably leaning more towards the warm. You mentioned like the quarterback carousel this season. I think that's kind of a tough one. I like that he is making adjustments and making changes to try to keep pushing his team. I do think that the Deshaun Watson, it was such a blunder. I really consider it potentially one of the worst trades of all time. And I hate to say it, but I think Baker Mayfield, I'm not a fan of him at all. But I think he's outplayed Deshaun Watson this year. And I think that next year is going to be a big testament to what Deshaun Watson and his legacy would be in the NFL, because I don't think he has really that many more second chances, even if he does get hurt. But moving on, we have the Tennessee Titans with Mike Vrabel. I'm going to go and put them a little bit on the warm seat. I know that he's been, consistently in the AFC South division champion kind of picture for a while, and now that they've kind of had some little bit of struggles as of late, I think Will Levis has shown some ability here and there to make some plays happen, and I think that's great for the team. And I really do think that Mike Vrabel is a great coach. But I will say, though, I think that there's going to be something said for such a quick regression, and if they can't have a little bit of an improvement next year, and maybe not necessarily them competing for the AFC South, but maybe at least a wild card spot, I really could see the owner kind of coming down and asking for a little bit more and potentially seeing what else is out there, especially if you're given a quarterback with some good tools.
Yeah, I'd say it's warm. I mean, Vrabel has a pretty decent history of success in Tennessee. Obviously this year isn't great, but I think the emergence of the other teams in the South, we're talking about the Colts even potentially making the playoffs, just kind of shows that it was easy for him to make it as a AFC South champion, more so because of the lack of talent on the other teams. And now, like with last year, Jacksonville making it, and now that they've kind of established their hold for, I'd say, the foreseeable future, given how young a lot of their, cornerstones are. I think there's potential that, they're kind of might be ready to move on. I think this year has been really weird, and I think Levis is talented enough that if you bring in enough talent around him and, kind of get things worked out on both sides of the ball, that there's still a lot of success to be had there. I don't think it's definitely not hot, but I could see it starting to warm up a little bit potentially, depending on how the offseason next season kind of go.
Yeah, I agree. I would say it's warming up for sure. I think next season is going to be a big one for him. I don't think they're going to make a coaching change as the division really starts to heat up, because Jags are getting hot, or they're starting to improve over past years. Last year was a good year, but prior to that, Texans, they're definitely improving. In the Colts with Anthony Richardson, they're showing some bright spots. So that division in the next couple of years is going to be very competitive, and it's kind of like teams changing divisions in football, right? It's like Texas and OU, just kind of transitioning. You want to have those guys kind of in place. before when you make a big change. The division's about to make a big change, take a big step forward. So stick with the guy that has some proven success in the division, see where it lands him whenever the division actually is more competitive. And if he just doesn't fit and gets his butt kicked, then out with him.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see. I'd say he's still on the warm seat. Last year, looking at their record, he didn't win a game after week 12 or week 11. He finished the season, he got skunked. And then looking at their schedule this time, they got Miami, Houston, Seattle, Houston, and Jacksonville. They easily could lose all those games. So, I mean, with two kind of back-to-back like blunders of second half of the season, they could call for a coaching change. I think he's a good guy, and I don't think the players necessarily think it. I don't think they're saying that he's the issue, but you know, with the current landscape of the NFL, anything can happen, and usually the coach is the first to go.
Yeah. All right, up next, kind of a little bit of a tricky one, especially with the legacy, but I'm going to go with the New England Patriots. I think Bill Belichick is going to be in a little bit of like a mutual agreement to part ways or potential mutual retirement. I don't see him really wanting to, I know he was chasing the Don Shula record, but, you know, I just think with the Patriots, they got to look at what's next. I think that, you know, obviously I believe it was 6 Super Bowls that he won them was, you know, it's an incredible task and it's an incredible resume. But, I mean, guys, the Patriots have not been really relevant in the past 2 years, and this past season has just been an absolute joke. I think their offense isn't very good. Their defense has some players and some pieces here and there, but I mean, even Jabril Peppers, one of their own players, came out on the field and said, "Yes, you know, you're lucky that we suck ass." Like that's just not good. It's not a good sign from the coach. It's not a good sign from the players or the GM who, and again, the buck stops there with Bill because he is the GM. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets fired before the end of the season or at least during the off season. Not necessarily a traditional firing, but more of like a mutual, we're parting ways kind of agreement. What are your takes on that?
I completely agree. I think we've said that multiple times this year throughout the course of the season. I think Patriots just need to start completely over. I mean, it's just this is never what I thought this would have happened as fast as it did, but it has, and I don't think you can fire Bill Belichick. I don't think that's possible, but I think there's reason to believe that he will retire whenever the season wraps up. Obviously, one of the greatest coaches of all time, but it's time to move on, and it's bad when you're getting bulletin board material from somebody on your own team. So that's not an indicator. I don't know what is.
Yeah, you know, the Belichick one's a little bit interesting to me too, because he acts as their GM, and I feel like if he were to be fired, it'd be more so from kind of that side of things, kind of their draft and how they've set their team up in the past couple of years. Yes, they're not winning. Obviously, that falls on the head coach, and Tim would argue quarterback also. Quarterback wins. But back to Belichick. Yeah, I think he's on the hot seat. He is. They need to figure it out, and I think he may have one more year, kind of a give me kind of legacy type year, but if he doesn't figure it out next year, he's definitely out.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think he's going to get fired or, like I said, retired. With that coaching record so obtainable, he's just one of those guys that they're gonna have to die for him to leave. Essentially, he's gonna continue and kind of grit and grind it out. I do see that it could be a very real possibility that, like Brandon said, he does lose that GM ability. Patriots haven't drafted a All-Pro player since Tom Brady, and their last, or I should say, real position, not special teams. They've had a couple of special teams guys, but I'm not counting those. And then Rob Gronkowski. Those are the last 2 guys that they've drafted that have made that they've actually made an All-Pro team. So, and then there's been a lot of draft busts that they've had the past couple of years. N'Keal Harry, to kind of the biggest one right now. Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, shoot.
And they reach on players too.
They reached. Cole Strange really hasn't done a whole lot. I mean, Tyreek Thornton's has been in and out of the injury, like IR. So it's just been a whole mess. And when it seems like every draft pick they make, it's like what do you like? He could have been there in the seventh round.
Just chose
What are we doing?
consensus. Yeah.
You can't find Wes Welker and Julian Edelman every time, So
yeah, I agree with you guys. I think that like it comes down to that maybe at the start they'll at least revoke the GM privileges. I think that's got to happen. I mean, especially and especially with the potential to get Drake May or Caleb Williams if they finish how they are right now in their rankings. I just don't know though, because I think it could be tough. Do you really want to start your franchise quarterback with Bill Belichick, who is very, let's just say he's kind of old school with things, and I don't know if he necessarily is going to give a player right off the bat the same kind of responsibilities he gave to someone like Tom. I also don't like the fact that like Bill has gone through all these different.
He didn't even really give responsibility to Tom. Tom just got thrust into it because of Bledsoe's injury.
True. Yeah.
I think Belichick would make Caleb Williams cry personally, but
no, for sure.
I think Caleb Wilson would stay in college if the Patriots got the number 1 pick.
Yeah, I could see it.
Yeah, if they were trying to revoke his GM privileges, though, it's like taking a head coach down to an OC or DC type thing. I don't think it goes smooth, and I think that's when you'd maybe see him retire.
Yeah, I could see it. All right, rounding out the AFC, though, going to be kind of quick here. Tagging two more AFC East teams together. I'm going with the Jets and the Bills. I think Rob Saleh and Doug McDermott are a little bit on the warm seat here. The Jets, I know that they had Aaron Rodgers go down, and that's just absolutely atrocious for the franchise, and it sucks. But let's be honest, guys. He's stuck with his gut with Zach Wilson for far too long. They could have made adjustments and changes, kind of like what Cleveland did. But instead they didn't. They didn't go trade for another backup. They didn't go like try to sign someone in free agency. They just kind of stuck with Zach. Lost, I think it's like 4 or 5 games in a row. And now they're just in complete shambles. I know that there's mentions of Aaron Rodgers coming back. I don't see why or why he would even want to risk that. But long story short, that defense is so great. And I think Robert Saleh, again, great defensive-minded coach. And I like him as a coach. I just think it's like, hey, you got to score some points on the offense or your defense is really going to be, wanting to kind of not necessarily leave, but they're going to be asking questions. And then next up is Doug McDermott with the Bills. I think it's kind of inexcusable for you to have, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid, and a lot of studs on defense as well, and not be able to make the playoffs. I feel like if they don't make the playoffs, it's really going to be like hey, this was your 1 year. Next year, you better make it or we're giving you the boot. But what are y'all's thoughts on those two teams?
Yeah, I agree on both. I think the whole Jets thing, everything started falling apart as soon as Aaron Rodgers went down, and it's a shame that a defense that good is having to deal with an offense that bad. It's kind of the inverse of how I feel with LSU this past year in college football. On the Bills side of things, they fired their offensive coordinator, who was like, whenever some statistic came out, he was like a top 5 OC this year. So it just seems like the franchise doesn't really know what to do with itself right now. Kind of wasting this season with, Josh Allen's not going to be getting any younger, and Stephon Diggs keeps complaining. So you could see both of them dealing with some very hot seats whenever the season's wrapped up.
Yeah, I agree with both. I think both seats are heating up.
Yeah, I think if they would have replaced Wilson, especially put in Simeon before Boyle, I honestly still don't know why Boyle's even in the NFL. He didn't prove anything in college and hasn't done anything.
I don't know how he's in the NFL.
That's what I don't. Apparently, he's like Rodgers' 3rd string quarterback for his whole career or something like that. But maybe Rodgers told him to start him, but who knows? But yeah,
board guy.
Both of them could be hot.
All right, moving on to the NFC. Kind of to be quick here, I'm actually going to target a whole division here. I think the NFC South has been absolutely terrible. I think that all 4 coaches should be, potentially watching for their jobs. Starting off with the Saints, again, they've been on a complete losing streak as of late. Their fans are fed up. That's one of those organizations where they don't really have a lot of cap space and maneuverability to work with. I just think it's overall time for a rebuild. So I would look for the Saints to move on. The Panthers, they already fired their head coach. I kind of am curious to see where the Panthers go because they don't have that 1st-round pick next year, so that's going to make things a little tough for whoever wants that job. Todd Bowles on the Bucks, look, they've had a good run. They kind of have some aging talent that you might want to look for trading as draft or for some draft capital. And then lastly is the Falcons with Arthur Smith. Again, I know that they might win the division, and look, Arthur Smith say what you want, he has a lot of talent, and he can win some games, and the Falcons can be a tough team, but I really just don't see them as like a very threatening team in the playoffs. And I think if they get completely blown out in the first round, I wouldn't be surprised if the owner is just kind of fed up of this mediocrity and he's ready to pull the plug and actually get someone with a little bit more of a tune for actually using these weapons. What are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. Saint, as somebody from Louisiana with a ton of friends that are fans of the Saints, it's time. Pete Carmichael, adios. Dennis Allen, adios. We'll catch y'all later. Time for a rebuild. Obviously, don't need to talk about the Panthers just because of what happened with Frank. Bulls, I could definitely see it happening. I mean, I think they've honestly kind of overperformed this year. I didn't expect anything from them. So, I mean, it's not saying much because they're not that good. But, their run's over. So, and they need to kind of work on the aging talent that they have on their roster. But the Falcons, it's just a weird deal. I don't get it. I mean, I would want to fire Arthur Smith just by how blatantly he misuses talent from a player perspective. But also, I mean, I completely agree. They're going to probably end up taking that 4 spot, play either the Eagles or the Cowboys at the 5 and just get demolished. And I mean, I think it'd probably be time to move on. So,
yeah, I think all are heating up. I'm with Ryan on the Saints. Bucks is probably the safest of the 3 remaining. Arthur Smith is kind of starting to warm up also at the Falcons, but yeah, that's what I got. Kind of all are. You could see a big coaching carousel out of the NFC South and have a new new set of 4 faces next year.
Yeah, it's funny, the list that I prepared, all of them are ex-defensive coordinators who got promoted after having fantastic defensive careers, which I just noticed now. Dennis Allen has 20-44 overall record as a head coach. Previously, that was with the Denver Broncos, and then 10-16 with the Saints. He was promoted after having a top 10 defense 7 out of the 9 years he was DC with the Saints. And then since he's been the coordinator or the head coach, they've had bottom 20 defenses the past couple of years. So very underperforming, especially with the defensive-minded guy. And then, as Tim touched earlier, they have tons of bad contracts, which not necessarily the head coach's fault. Still a GM thing as well, but he's still bringing the guys in. And then his Todd Bowles as well hasn't really done a whole lot. Also an ex-defensive coordinator, had 3 straight top 15 defenses, and then got promoted around that 2020 period. When it seems like a lot of these guys are getting promoted, again, just hasn't done a whole lot. They kind of need to rebuild the whole franchise there. So I could see them kind of moving away.
Yeah, I agree. I think to kind of wrap up our big coaching carousel here, I think that the Bears, Matt Eberflus, I think his days are done, especially after the season. Another terrible year. He was given draft talent. He's given some players such as DJ Moore to help kind of expand on that offense, and just nothing has really happened this season. I really think that he's going to be gone. I think they're going to be drafting pretty highly, so I wouldn't be surprised if they secure another weapon or a quarterback and potentially offensive tackle. But I just think that moving forward, the Bears, they're going to be in a little bit of a rebuild, and they're going to want a new coach to kind of take the reins to that. Next up, I'm going to go with the Commanders as well. I think that Ron Rivera's kind of overstayed his welcome. I think the franchise with the new ownership is going to want someone new at the helm there. Wouldn't be surprised if it's Eric Bieniemy. Sam Howell's actually been playing pretty well, which I'm kind of surprised to say. I really didn't think much of him coming out of college. I thought that he had some talent, but didn't expect him to be
leading the league in yards, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Still.
But what are your thoughts on those two? Again, Bears and Commanders. Do you think they're going to be looking for a new coach by 2024?
Bears for sure. I mean, that's just seems like a rinse and repeat in Chicago. But I mean, hopefully they get it figured out. With the Commanders, similar to what we said about Belichick, obviously not in the same vein because Ron Rivera is not the coach that Belichick is. But I mean, Rivera is old. He's had a lot of health problems. I could see him retiring. And with the success of Bieniemy in Kansas City, and then even with the offense in Washington, he'd probably get promoted and then just kind of see how it goes. I mean, Washington isn't really in any sort of window to try and win anything with how good the Cowboys and the Eagles should be for a long time. So might as well give them a test run and see how it works. I know the guys kind of like him. So we'll see.
Yeah, for the sake of time, I think they're both on the hot seat.
Yeah, like Ryan said earlier, Ron Vera got a lot of health issues, getting up there. Hasn't had a whole lot of success, and then also new ownership. They kind of just want to clean house. Eric Bieniemy was one of the top head coach candidates last year before he signed with the Commanders, so he's kind of the obvious guy. I have also seen Bill Belichick rumored. I think that was just a PFT kind of thing, but yeah, I think Ron's, unfortunately, his time is over, so I think he's going to be out. And then Eberflus, Bears just been trash. So, and then with the lack of control in that coaching staff with the FBI investigation, I actually haven't seen anything came from that, but that's not a good look for the head coach.
No, not at all. Not at all. All right, I'm just going to do a quick speed run of the last three teams here. I think Giants are potential to look into. I don't think that they're going to look at firing Daboll after this season, but by the end of 2024, I mean, we might be looking at a new coach for the New York Giants. Daniel Jones should be coming back from injury, but that team has not been great even with him starting in the lineup. Next up, I got the Cowboys. I think if they get bounced in the first round or don't make a deep playoff run, Mike McCarthy is definitely on the hot seat, even though they have been performing well during the season and during the regular season as always. Dan Quinn is going to be a top candidate and is always someone that you want to look out for. So I could see him replacing him there. And then lastly, I have the Rams. I think if the Rams, I know we brought them up in the playoff picture, but if they don't make the playoffs, I could see a potential, mutual agreement to part ways with Sean McVay. McVay, a great coach, still very young. I could see him potentially going to the booth for a year or two and then going that Sean Payton route and going to another team. But that really wraps up our coaching carousel. I know we've named several coaches. I really could see a lot of these teams looking to push for a new direction, especially before the end of 2024.
Yeah. I think that wraps us up. Guys, it's been the End Zone. If you like what you see, like and subscribe, and we'll catch you all next time.